Joining our program now is Bill Murphy, and Bill is chairman and director of the Gold Antitrust Action Committee, otherwise known as GATA, and they are famous, of course, for looking into the idea that there has been some type of collusion among major financial institutions or governments to artificially suppress the price of gold. Bill, welcome to the show.
Peter, good to talk to you again.
Thanks for coming on. So it seems like the idea that something is going on, whether it's a conspiracy or something else, but it does seem like the idea that there is some effort to keep the price of gold from going up, that it is out there, right? There seems to be more evidence and more talk about this all the time.
Well, finally, yeah. GATA's been at this since 1999 with my colleague Chris Powell from Connecticut started this thing to expose what the bullion banks and the Federal Reserve and Treasury and Bank for International Settlements have been doing. And it's now coming into the mainstream, and we appreciate that. But what ought to be clear, I noticed some things that you probably on top of more than me even. I mean, how could you have had such quantitative easing this past year or two, and the Dow go up 3,000 points and gold go down $700 on the same news? I mean, there isn't anybody ahead of time who would have said that could have occurred.
Yeah, I just mentioned that it's ironic that quantitative easing is making the price of everything go up, but the one thing that should go up the most, which is gold.
But you know, that's exactly right. And in a way, it's sort of it's proving what God has to say. And if I might interject, you know, we have 15 years worth of evidence we have put together. People saying we're a conspiracy group, but it's not true. We're a fact-finding organization. We put all this together over the years.
Yeah. And, you know, but a lot of it, though, has to do with the collective, maybe not wisdom, the collective stupidity. You know, if so many people believe that, you know, that there's no inflation and that there's no reason to own gold, and so many people have so much confidence in central bankers and they don't have any worries about inflation. I mean, it is possible that the price of gold could be going down just because people don't perceive the threats and the value that's there. And eventually they will, just like, you know, people were buying internet stocks at crazy valuations before the crash. People were buying, you know, condos in Vegas, and they're doing the same thing in reverse when it comes to gold. But it's the same lack of understanding of the fundamentals that is causing a mispricing of the asset. You know, in the case of the dot-coms, they were priced too high. In the case of gold, it's being priced too low.
Well, that's exactly correct. And you're, in a way, explaining why this gold cartel, as we call it, does what they do, is to engender that exact sort of thinking. That is exactly the reason why they're suppressing the price. And you're also correct about the fundamental reasons why gold is going to go up. There are people that are saying that China alone is consuming through itself and the government and its citizens all the year's mine supply, and it's going to lead to some incredible excitement as this year goes on.
Yeah, and of course, this is great for China because we know that China has a lot of dollars, which they want to get rid of. There's lots of gold that they need to buy, and keeping the price of gold down is great news for China because it allows them to convert more of their worthless dollars into valuable gold at more favorable exchange rates so that they end up with more gold than they would otherwise have if the price was higher.
Yeah, you're correct. And they're just saying thank you very much. And I know they know what GATA knows. I've had 3 conference calls with the Chinese Investment Corporation over the years. I know the Russians know what GATA knows. We've had one of Putin's top economic advisors at 2 of our conferences, Andrei Bykov. They all know what GATA knows, and they're taking advantage of what the gold cartel, as we call it, is handing them.
Yeah, and, you know, because they're not going to cooperate. Because if the Western central banks want to sell gold in order to keep the price down so that people don't realize how bad they're screwing up and how bad this monetary and fiscal policy is. It's kind of like, you know, I've said it's like the canary in the coal mine. They want all the miners to die. They don't want them to see the canary keeling over, so they're trying to keep the canary alive, you know, long enough to get all the gas in there. But you've got these other powers that aren't going to cooperate and that are going to buy all the gold that everybody else is selling.
Well, that's true. It's a different philosophy of buying. You know, in the East, they buy when things are cheap and are giving it away. They understand what the importance of owning gold and silver are versus where we're pretty much momentum traders. You know, when things are going great, everybody here wants to buy more. And when it goes in the tank, people tend to sell. That's what happened when the gold cartel attacked last mid-April and forced the price down hundreds of dollars quickly. They scared money managers and these ETFs to death, and they unloaded all these, hundreds of tons of gold at terrible prices, and then the people in China and other countries over there, bought it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, because somebody had to buy all that gold. Where did it go? Somebody got a great deal on that gold. Meanwhile, I mentioned, even earlier in the show, it's a foregone conclusion now that gold's going lower. Everybody knows it's going down, and anytime it goes up, nobody cares. They just dismiss the rallies because they say, well, it's not going to last. Gold's going to go down because all the problems have been solved. The U.S. economy is booming. The Fed's going to be able to get rid of QE, no problem. They're going to be able to unwind their balance sheet, no big deal. Everything's going to go back to normal. Inflation is dead, so gold's going back down to 600-700. I mean, this is basically what everybody believes.
Yeah, right. I think every investment bank and bullion house is neutral. Most of them are all bearish. But this is interesting. Gold's come up some 150 and yesterday 160, $170 off its lows, and almost everybody is bearish out there in the mainstream investment world. So far they're way offside. In addition, the open interest on the COMEX is only gone up like 15, 20,000 contracts for this kind of a move. I mean, I've never seen it not react more. And why is that important is because the public is not there. There's no real investment interest yet at all in our parts of the world, and that's all still to come. So there's a lot to look forward to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and meanwhile, they don't even bother to notice that, it costs, $1,100, $1,200, $1,300 an ounce just to mine the gold. A lot of these people just assume that the gold companies are going to go bankrupt, that, now nobody needs gold anymore. And so it doesn't matter what it costs. If it costs $1,200 to mine it, but the price goes down to $800, they just assume that, all these gold mining companies are just going to pack it up. They're going to shut down their mines. They're going to, default on their bonds. They're going to lay off their workers. It's over. After thousands of years, we finally moved to a point in time where nobody wants gold anymore.
Yeah, well, I don't think so. And you bring that up, they've actually created a depression in the gold and silver industries. I mean, we're back pretty much from I've never seen the psychology worse. It's gotten a little bit better lately, but it's a depression. And you're right. The miners can't continue on like this because costs are going up again this year, and they just can't make any money. We're actually back, in my opinion, where we were in 1999, 2000 when gold was at 300. It's that bad a situation.
Yeah, in fact, some of the companies were making more money back then than they are now. Because of the the escalation in costs over the last 13 years, because inflation has really taken its toll on the mining industry because it's increased the cost of mining, but because everybody is convinced by the government there's no inflation, the price of gold has not risen as much as it should have, given how much inflation has already taken place. But what's even more amazing is that the price of gold is not reacting not only to the inflation that has already taken place, but all the inflation that we know is baked into the cake. Because we have all these governments with massive amounts of debt, no prayer of ever repaying it. The only thing they can do is monetize it. So there's massive debt monetization and inflation on the horizon. That should be factored into the price of gold right now.
Yes, and again, that's why they did what they did last year. I know my good friend, John Embry of Sprott Asset Management, believes this is as good an investment opportunity as it was back in 2000 for the very reasons you're pointing out. There was absolutely no reason for gold to have collapsed $700 with all that's going on, the stuff that you're talking about. But we know what was done. We know why. And they've created a price that's artificially too low. It cannot be sustained down here. And that's why you're going to see gold explode as the year goes on.
Yeah, to me, it is very similar to the 1970s, when the price of gold was controlled at $35 an ounce before they devalued. And, the gold mines had to mine it, but, they were stuck at a 1932 price of gold. Meanwhile, they had 40 years of inflation, and the government was keeping the price of gold down. And eventually, they depegged and they let the price of gold float, and we know what happened to it. It went straight up. It went up to, $850 an ounce in a very, very short period of time. And I think we have a similar situation now where you do have a ridiculously low price for gold. for whatever reason, whether it's the result of a conspiracy or just a conspiracy of ignorance. But I certainly know that Wall Street has a vested interest in gold going down because it's like a scorecard. It's a barometer of the health of the economy. And, if the price of gold were to be where it should be, everybody would know that the dollar was done, that the Fed had screwed up, that there is no end, there is no positive way out of this mess. And so all they can do, it's kind of like a kid who's doing lousy in school, not letting his parents see his report card. Or maybe it reminds me of that scene in Goodfellas where they took the mailman, they shoved his head into a pizza oven, and they said, don't deliver any more letters to this kid's house. I mean, maybe that's what they're doing. The kid is flunking school, but they're not letting the mailman deliver the report card, although I guess they don't even mail report cards anymore. They're just probably emailed. But you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, well, you stole my line about the barometer. That's exactly correct. Gold, they look at gold as a barometer, and it's bad for business when the price is going up. It's bad for the politicians. It's bad for Wall Street. It's bad for the investment world. I mean, who makes money when gold goes up? Nobody except the people invested in in the mining operation. So it's in their interest to keep it down, keep it subdued, point to gold being under control, how cheap it is, for just what you're saying, how good everything else is. But the Chinese have fouled up everything.
Yeah. Yeah, and then they can criticize me. They can say, well, what does Peter Schiff know? He's been saying the price of gold was going to go up, and look, it went down. They forget a fact, it did go up for 12 years or so, but that doesn't matter because look how much it went down in 2013. You see, he's totally wrong. He has no idea what he's talking about, warning about an economic collapse or talking about the Federal Reserve and all the inflation that's coming. Look, there's no inflation. So if they can keep the price of gold down, they make people like me look bad because, we're saying the price of gold is going to go up, which of course it will. But the longer they can delay it, the more they can pretend that, I don't know what I'm talking about or you don't know what you're talking about. But, hey, we got a break, and we'll keep talking about the gold market and what's going on with GATA. I'm interested in where you guys are going now with this. So we'll be right back.
Peter Schiff is back on the air.
We are talking with Bill Murphy, the chairman and director of GATA, Gold Antitrust Action Committee. And, Bill, I've often wondered about this, and I wonder if you've thought about it or maybe talked with anybody about it in some of your discussions. But, you've got large central banks like China. They've got trillions of dollars. I think their total foreign reserves are around $4 trillion. It's almost the same size as the Fed's balance sheet. We wonder how much gold they actually have. Officially, gold is only a few percentage points of those reserves. Unofficially, I'm sure it's quite a bit more. But why doesn't a country like China, with trillions in reserves, given how inexpensive the major gold companies are. I mean, they're trading at such discounts to their book value. I mean, China could buy every gold miner in the world for just a few $1 billion. I mean, nothing. They could buy all the big gold mines, and they would own all the gold. They would own all the gold in the ground. They could divert 100% of their production right to their own vaults. It doesn't even matter what it costs to produce it. They'll just pay that. It's cheaper than buying the gold. And they would have all the gold. I mean, what am I missing? Why don't they buy, Barrick and Goldcorp and Franco-Nevada and Newmont? Just buy them all. No one else wants them. They could pay twice the current market price, and they'd still get a steal. And once they did that, the gold there would skyrocket in value that they just bought.
Well, it's a good point. The only thing I can think of comes off the top of my head is that China does everything secretly. I mean, we reported from what I do for 5 years of China buying gold to intermediaries in the early part of this century. And it was 5 years before they reported it. And they have been scouring around, gobbling up things as they've done with buying the physical gold. When it comes to the companies, it would be, I think, probably too overt for them. I mean, I speak to somebody more knowledgeable than I am on this, but I think that's the only thing that makes sense is that they don't want to create waves and to make it known what you're talking about, because it makes a lot of sense.
I mean, it's possible that governments could object to the purchases and try to block it, but why? What are they going to argue that gold is strategic and that they need it? I mean, how are they going to argue? I mean, as far as the rhetoric is concerned, we should think, who cares if the China's dumb enough to overpay for all this gold? Let them buy all the gold companies. I mean, everybody says gold doesn't mean anything anyway. So how are we going to come out publicly and oppose the Chinese overpaying for gold mining companies? Right? I mean, strategic. I know that we don't want China to have all that gold. But, people don't want to admit it. But, I think rather than buying the gold, why not own the gold? Why not own these mines? I mean, it's a lot better than owning treasury bonds.
But what GATA says, the United States would rather divulge our nuclear secrets than what we're doing in the gold market. That's how big a deal it is. My colleague, Frank Veneroso, my old colleague, said, Bill, this is so much bigger than you think. And I think that's just the name of the game. This is a huge story. They're trying to keep things under control as best possible. And if China were to do something like that, that's where they lose control.
Yeah, other things they could do is they can go to some of the gold mines and just offer to pay them a certain premium above market for their gold and just have contracts and buy up their production. Just go to these gold companies and contract, I'm going to buy your next 10 years of production right now. I'm going to guarantee I'm going to contract for it. And here's what I'm going to pay. So, I mean, there are different things that they could do to take advantage of the fact that the price is so ridiculously low. I got to ask, though, what are you guys up to now legally? I remember you had been involved in some kind of litigation with respect to gold or Freedom of Information Acts. I mean, what's GATA doing right now to try to, dig up, more information on what's happening behind the scenes in the gold market?
Well, we actually ferreted a lot out of the Federal Reserve in our lawsuit. They actually had to give us a check for nearly $3,000 for not giving us a document that the judge said they should, and it was very revealing about gold swap operations and so on. So we're still doing some litigious work with their lawyers regarding the Fed to get information. My colleague Chris Powell is going to Hong Kong in a couple of weeks to speak at a conference there and be on Bernie Lowe's show on CNBC there. And what I'm trying to do is get something going in Germany because their regulators are making some noise about the gold market being manipulated. And the obvious thing that you've reported on, which is a joke, Germany is supposed to get 300 tons of gold back from the U.S. by 2020, and all they can get is 5 tons. So between this latest talk about market manipulation, Germany can't get its gold back, which we don't think they can't get it back because it's gone. It's gone.
Why do you think
over there in Germany with one of their big papers, Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung or Handelsblatt, or somebody like that, and get some right people there, we think it could be a big deal.
Yeah, why do you think Germany isn't making a bigger deal out of this? I mean, we're the custodian of their gold. I mean, if I had left some furniture with a warehouse and I came to pick it up and they said, well, we don't have it, maybe we'll give it back to you in little bits over the next decade. Wait a minute, you restored it for me. I need it now. I don't want it in 10 years. I mean, why isn't Germany more irate about the fact that we've been storing their gold and now they ask for it back and we just basically say we're not giving it to you?
Oh, I think it begs the questions in a way. I mean, it's ridiculous, and I think there's different factions over there. Some political people will realize Germany's history and what this means if the gold is gone. Then you've got the bank over there, which is probably, again, it's a very mainstream organization, and all the central bankers in the West tend to operate together and in sync. And I don't think they know what to do, and they're trying to hush it up. And but the fact is, in this day and age of sophistication, all these things changing in terms of advances, you can't get your gold back. I mean, it's almost ludicrous.
Yeah. It seems very suspicious, for anybody who thinks that maybe we don't have any of the gold. The fact that Germany asked for it back and we just say no, and and the question is why. I mean, because if it is there,
this is something that I've been talking about for years. And James Turk first brought it up about swapping our gold with Germany. The United States can't sell any of its gold without an act of Congress. But there's nothing that precludes us from swapping our gold with Germany and selling their gold on the sly. And we think that's what has been done, and Germany's gold is gone. That's why they can't get it back.
Well, and we're not giving them our gold.
No, because then it would expose the whole scam.
Well, how did they? I mean, gold is gold. So I mean, I don't know if they if the bars were numbered, if they can tell which bars were theirs. But hey, anyway,
well,
Bill, hey, appreciate the work. Appreciate the work. I got a hard Bill. I got to rush. We got a hard break. Thanks for coming on the show. Appreciate the work you're doing. Hour 2 of the Peter Schiff Show is coming up right after this. We will be right back.